Look at this boy. Do you recognize him? If not, shame on you. But this is Gon from the hit manga Hunter x Hunter, for those unaware, a battle shonen from the magazine Shonen Jump. For those that might not also know this, shonen manga and anime are targeted at young boys, and hey, I watched them as a young boy, and I still love them now, as a grown-ass man. Because really, anyone of any demographic can find something to enjoy with them. There might even be some things that you can only pick up on as you get older, because you just might not have knowledge on certain topics as someone still learning their times tables. But to glaze Hunter x Hunter specifically for a bit, the story's great, the characters are amazing, and the battles are fun and inventive. Like, Nen as a power system is so elite that it's still used as a prime example for how to do them right. So why then do I see so many people out there that find it a challenge to simply admit that they like the show for what it is, a battle manga with young boys as its main demographic? Of course, there's much more to this manga than just its fights. I'd be heavily downplaying the series if I only spoke about that aspect, truly. But many a time have I witnessed people that refuse to admit the simple, undisputed fact that this is, in fact, a battle shonen. Instead, they'll often refer to it by things like a soft seinen, series that are targeted towards young adult males, a masterpiece that transcends the label of battle shonen, or, probably the most common, a deep philosophical novel that deconstructs the typical shonen manga. Oftentimes, they'll get mad defensive when you call it what it is, or go on the offensive if they feel they caught you lacking in that regard. Now, I used Hunter x Hunter as an example here, and it is a prime example of this phenomenon, but this is most definitely not something limited to this series. Hell, not even just to battle shonen, but rather to media targeted towards kids in general. A lot of people seem to get really defensive when you call their kids series a kids series. But why? Now, I may have asked the question, but it was rhetorical. I already know the answer. They feel embarrassed. Now that they're growing up, or already grown up like moi, they feel like their tastes have to grow up too, needing to only partake in more refined and mature works of literature. But they still like those shows and games and books from their childhood, you see, which causes the dilemma. So what do they opt to do? They cope the hell out of things, dog. This may be a kid's show, but it actually has really dark and mature themes that you couldn't even find in adult shows. If I had a nickel for every time I saw somebody say something along these lines, I don't know how many nickels I'd have because my memory's ass, but it'd have to be at least enough for me to buy a nice Arizona with. Now, before you jump down my throat, I actually half agree with these people in a lot of these cases. Many of these series do have rather mature topics for their demographic, or are surprisingly violent for something aimed at kids. But I'm sorry to say, fellas, that no matter what you say, these series are still aimed at kids and teens. And that's okay. Many people feel they have to justify their enjoyment of a series like this because they're aimed at younger fellas. But you'll find you'll enjoy things a lot more if you just embrace those series in their entirety. Typically, I'll see fellas like this hyper focus on the mature themes a series does have and push them as the reason for them not to be embarrassed of it, while omitting the more quote-unquote childish stuff that they also have because otherwise they have to admit that they like a kid's show. I used Battle Shonen as an example because it's extremely common to see these types of fellas appear there. Plus, I reside there, so I'm quite familiar with the landscape. Whether they're the kind to think more gore or darker themes equals more mature and better, or the ones that think if a story has a nice story that maybe involves more mature themes, that it's suddenly exempt from the title of shonen. They'll even shoo aside the title of battle shonen entirely because apparently battles are for kids and we're here for the deep ideological clashes of wills that just so happen to be accompanied by physical blows on occasion. Like, why jump through hoops, dog? Just say you like the dang show, fights and all. You gain nothing from trying to shy away from what the series is in its entirety. Instead, you lose out on the full enjoyment you could have by just admitting that you like seeing these anime niggas throw hands. And hey, like I said, I'm merely using Battle Shonen as an example, but it's far from the only place that this exists. Two other prevalent places that I see it are with kids' cartoons, just differentiating anime and Western cartoons here, and games, practically just in general. At least from my point of view, I feel like this became a more prevalent problem around the early mid to 2010s. But that could very easily just be because that's when this little boy started becoming a little man himself. Either way, this was also when a lot more kids' cartoons started to have a pattern of chill, episodic fun times with occasional lore drops to a more serialized, serious storytelling down the line. Stuff like Adventure Time or Steven Universe come to mind, for example, you know? And I think that's why I would see so many people, even slightly older than me, feel like they had to justify their watches with those newly introduced mature themes. And justify they did. Shows that don't really fit this mold but still had some nice themes to explore, like My Little Pony, also had massive adult fan bases. And that type of justification became such a common defense coming from there that it practically became its own meme. And as a big old Sonic fan, of course I'm going to be using Sonic as an example for games here. I gotta shove that little hedgehog in any video shaped hole that I can. Now, I may have been sounding like I'm attacking people who feel like they need excuses to still like stuff that they enjoyed as a kid, or other children's media in general, but honestly, I get it. I never stopped liking or fully enjoying stuff I liked as a kid, sure, but when I started going to high school, I definitely started to calm down with how I presented that to people who weren't my friends. And low-key, this was at least somewhat for the best, cause I was a Naruto running, art project Sonic drawing, Minecraft parody for English class singing, don't ask, kinda kid. I became more socially aware, but I still loved all of them just the same. Sure, I grew past acting the same way a kid would to anyone in earshot, I saved that for the homies, but I never stopped being me or expressing my love for these interests. The way I saw it, it was much better that I be my genuine self and tell people what I'm truly interested in than to fake what I'm into or mask those same interests in a more mature light in the hopes of fitting in better. I may have matured, but I knew damn well that this was still kids' media that I was enjoying, and I didn't care in the slightest. Now, in all fairness, I know not everybody was as lucky as I was in this regard, but just presenting myself and my interests for what they actually are worked to my benefit. I found great friends who were also into the same stuff that I was, and I actually wasn't bullied for being a giant weeby Sonic fan. As shocking as that may sound at first glance, most people aren't out to get you for legal and morally sound interests, as long as you aren't a little stinker about it. You don't have to mask yourself or your kid-friendly interests as something they're not at all, really. In my experience, a lot of people actually quite like the authenticity of genuine fans when you're just respectable about it. Like, I was so known for my love of Sonic that when I posted a couple drawings of Sonic a year or so ago on my IG story, I had buds that I hadn't talked to since elementary school hit me up and be like, damn, you still the same nigga for real. I respect it. Never changed, dog. And you know what? That gave me a real nice feeling. And hell, I'm probably more outwardly expressive with my love of Sonic and other children's media than I ever was throughout high school, because it was that rejuvenated passion for all of them that led me to try my hand at YouTube again for the umpteenth time. And it required that kind of renewed boldness for me to post a Spotify rap like this for the public to see. Now, before you jump down my throat again, I swear I listen to far more than just video game music, guys. I just listen to them on YouTube mostly, honest. I swear. And actually, on that point, I think while it's perfectly fine to indulge in the stuff you liked as a kid, it's also good to at least try and expand your horizons. Try new things and all that. Not for the sake of looking more mature, but just for the fun of it all. Just like a lot of people can miss out on great experiences by dismissing all children's media, the same thing is true for media meant for older audiences. Never write one off entirely, I say. Give both things a try without worry for the age labels. Just don't use this as reasoning for humans and children, please! I think a great example for why you should is the many people that say that gaming is in a terrible spot or that games just aren't as good nowadays, which led to the creation of this all-timer tweet. This can easily be reversed to describe people who only play games considered more kid-friendly while scoffing at the more mature ones, but the point still stands. Don't close your mind off to trying new things, nor the people that partake in those legal and morally sound endeavors. I think you'll find things a lot more enjoyable when you're more open-minded like that. But hey, I get it. Not everyone in your immediate surroundings is gonna be accepting of your interests. You might even get made fun of it, and that might make you want to hang it all up just to get them off your back, to fit in. And to those fellas, I have 2 bits of advice. 1, look for homies online. If you really can't find anyone to share those interests with in person, there's always going to be a space for you somewhere online. You might even be pleasantly surprised by just how many could actually be in your area. Just be safe if you try to meet up, be smart, and make sure you ain't about to get kidnapped, please. And 2, be aware of your character. Stay socially aware. Even if you're a bit more expressive than others with your interests, sometimes it isn't actually your interests themselves that push people away. It's you. Trust me, I've known the types, and they really don't realize why people don't rock with them. And then they blame it on what they're into instead of looking inwards first. Like there's a difference between someone with a big love for, say, fairy tale, who might love to talk about it with others a lot, and then someone who blasts fairy tale hentai on their phone during class and is always trying to show off some gooner activities to you. Like sometimes you're just sharing a bit too much of yourself, dog. I really don't need to know about the stuff that you're jorking to. Or at least know who you're talking to, and if they're chill with that kind of talk first. Don't just hit anybody up with that, you know? Express your genuine interest to other people, absolutely, but also make sure to show the right amount of restraint to different groups of people. It's kind of like calling your homies the most rancid insults imaginable versus calling just anybody that. You're gonna get 2 very different reactions this way, I promise you. In fact, as a general rule of thumb, just keep all gooning related topics away from the general public, especially those typically seen as a bit more, eccentric? A little side tangent to all you fellas out there, and you know who you are. I'm not gonna throw any labels at you outright, cause I know there are some things that we like in fiction that we'd have zero interest in or even despise in real life. But you gotta know that just sharing that stuff with everybody is going to make people look at you weird. Like, even if my own homie came up to me one day and said, "You know what, man? I'm really into seeing people eat doo-doo straight from the bootyful source," but only when it's fictional. I'll probably take his word for it on the fictional part, but how the hell am I supposed to look at him the same way now, huh? At least with a homie, it just becomes ammo to use against him later down the line, as homies are known to do. But with someone I'm not so familiar with, I just would not be able to look at you the same way anymore. I might still talk to you, maybe on occasion, maybe the same, who knows. It might not affect our relationship much at all depending on your general character, but that's always gonna be on my mind now. You would have taken my mental innocence with you, forever tainted. It might sound antithetical for my whole point with the video to say, hey, be your genuine self, enjoy that kid's media, and express that if you want, there's no need to feel embarrassed, and then turn around and be like, not that stuff though. But I don't want you to confuse being yourself with being a juvenile menace. And if that is your genuine self, then buddy, I think you might have to take a long talk with that mirror, cause that character arc of yours might need a kickstart. Just learn to balance these things out depending on your familiarity with the people around you. Personally, I'm always my genuine self even around strangers. I'm definitely more introverted than I am extroverted, so it might be harder for me to strike up a conversation with people I don't know. But if the conversation calls for it, I'll definitely bring up the stuff that I'm into. It just so happens that a lot of those are related to gaming and anime. That's just how I find out if the person or people that I'm talking to might have any common interests. But because I don't know these people all that well, I'm not going to express every ounce of actual interest I have in these things just yet. Unless if they match that energy immediately, in which case, absolutely, I'll be more outwardly expressive about it. You've just got to learn the timing. Become more aware of when you need to exercise restraint and just how much depending on the people that you're with. I feel like that'll carry you a long way. I might sound a little all over the place over here, but really I just want this vid to be about people accepting or bettering themselves, to know that you shouldn't have to feel ashamed of having more childish interests even at your big age of 14. It's extremely common to have that edgy phase where you feel everything you consume has to be dark, gritty, and mature, and if that's genuinely what you're into, then that's a-okay. Just don't feel like you have to like these things out of obligation or out of a desire to fit in better. And while this differs from situation to situation, before you start blaming the world or society for why you may be getting avoided or not interacted with as much as you'd like, be sure to take a look at yourself and how you're acting first. But either way, never feel like you've got to give up those interests, man. I find it such a shame when I see so many people feel like they have to justify the maturity of the media or hobbies that they enjoy to other people in order to talk about them, or hell, even enjoy them themselves. There are always going to be people degrading of other legal and morally sound interests, unfortunately, but you shouldn't let them dictate how you feel about the stuff you love. Basically, what I'm saying is, just say you like watching shirtless buff men punch each other. Just say you like the man.